Well, fantasy football really has us going again right here because we're going through, some major injuries obviously this week. There's been a ton of them. Doesn't seem like we could really avoid injuries at this point in fantasy. But at the same time, we are getting some good news this week. Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, they're both active tonight. So we get to see a actually good Rams offense take on an already good Vikings offense here. So this one, I have a lot of excitement for this Thursday night game. I think this could be a big shootout, honestly. I've got plenty of excitement for this particular game. And I'm happy to be live again because yesterday was a disaster. My internet crashed and it was out for more than 5 hours, and my streaming service after that crashed. So I was planning on going live after I got internet back yesterday, and then it ended up not working out. So I'm glad to be live again with you guys. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel to show your support. That's all I ask of you today. And if you are interested in using the Matt Stafford projection tonight on Underdog, you can hit the higher on it because it's at 0.5 total yards. There's a link for that in the description if you do want to use it. So let's take a look at the inactives for tonight before we get into any questions that you guys may have. Let's see what the inactives are looking like here. So nobody really of note, it doesn't look like on the Vikings side of the ball. It doesn't look like there's really anything serious to note on the Vikings side of the ball. The Rams, yeah, Jordan Whittington, he's inactive. But again, Jordan Whittington, like, his time is up, right? Like, he's at best wide receiver 3. And I think, honestly, their wide receiver 3 is Tutu Atwell. So I don't really see Jordan Whittington being that involved either way. But obviously, Jordan Whittington being out tonight, you can't play him again. And again, it's Cooper Kupp night. It is Puka Nacua night. I'm really excited for this Thursday night game, honestly, guys. So let's go ahead and get into some of y'all's questions before game time. Arturo Flores, what's going on? Trade Neighbors for Kupp? No, I wouldn't do that. Listen, the thing with Malik Neighbors is that you have to obviously bake in the fact that he doesn't have a good quarterback. Like, that has to be part of your process of analysis. And it should have been before the start of the season. Now, it's important to note that Daniel Jones had 2 disaster games this year. The first disaster game was week 1, and I was definitely thinking that would kind of define his whole season. And it really didn't. I mean, he stabilized after that. So this is just kind of what Daniel Jones is, man. Like, he's definitely prone to disaster games. Like, that's just the nature of Daniel Jones. But there are other games where he looks functional and competent. And Cooper Kupp, to me, like, this has been my thing. I got a lot of flack for this several weeks ago when I said that I did my rest of season wide receiver rankings update a couple weeks ago, and Cooper Kupp wasn't even in the top 30. And people were pissed. People were like, dude, you're an idiot. Where are you getting your information? All that kind of stuff. And it's like, listen, this reminds me so much of Keenan Allen. It's like, obviously, when Cooper Kupp plays, he's really good. But this guy, if you've just watched him over the past 3 years, like, he has been so hurt so often. It's crazy. Like, he cannot stay healthy. And it's ridiculous. So I can't put all in my chips on Cooper Kupp when I've got a Malik Neighbors right there who is young, healthy, and again, just dependent on other issues, but at least they're not of his own control, such as his health. Not that Cooper Kupp is trying to get hurt or anything like that, but Cooper Kupp's just older. He's older, and he's missed a lot of time over the past 3 years. Joel, what's going on tonight? Captain Uncomfortable, Puka's back, baby. Thanks for all the content. Really appreciate your time. Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate the support. That means everything to me. That's all that really matters to me, guys. Appreciate all of you. Deeds for Glory 7. What's going on? Puka or Cooper? So if it's Amari Cooper, I'm going with Amari Cooper for sure. And if it's Cooper Kupp, I will probably lean Cooper Kupp. Probably lean Cooper Kupp. Listen, with Puka, like, I'm not ready to, like, reinsert him back into my lineup personally. I get it, like, the excitement's there. no doubt about it, and I'm not trying to diminish the excitement or anything like that, but the reality is that this is an injury where I brought this up, when it first happened. It's like, what I've read about it is the risk of re-injury is not gone yet. So, like, I don't think that I can fully trust him out there yet. With Cooper Kupp, I mean, I feel the same way, but I do think that even with Puka Nacua there, I do think that Cooper Kupp is that number one in Los Angeles, so I'm going to go with Cooper Kupp personally. Joel, start Darnold or Goff? This week, I will go ahead and play Jared Goff. Listen, why am I blanking out on who Detroit is playing? Let's see. Detroit is playing the Titans. So, yeah, I don't, I'm not off of that at all. I think Darnold definitely does have a good matchup tonight, but just kind of the way he's been playing, let's look at his last several games. Good old Sammy Darnold. Last 3 games. Green Bay, he had a good game, 21.5 fantasy points. 5.3 against New York, and then 17.3 last week. 2 out of the 3 weren't bad. I mean, 2 out of the 3 got the job done. Jared Goff's on a heater, though. I mean, Jared Goff is literally... he can't be stopped right now. It's insanity how good Jared Goff has been over the past several weeks. And I don't want to take him off the heater. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to pull him. Jared Goff, last 3 weeks, 26.7, 25.1, 18.8. And again, quarterback, the position varies in points, depending on your format that you play in. So I'm going to go with Goff this week against the weak Tennessee Titans defense. Deeds for Glory 7. What do you rank Puka rest of season? It's hard to know right now, to be honest with you. To be completely transparent, I was not expecting to see Puka Nacua back until yesterday. I started seeing whispers that they designated him to return, and like he may return, and it's like usually when they designate you to return, you're coming back that night, or the next game at least. So I haven't had enough time to think about it. Right now, I want to just see how he plays tonight. Honestly, before I could give you a real good answer, the one that I feel confident about, I got to wait until I see him tonight. Because again, he may come out slow, and what I've read is that like this is not without risk of re-injury. This injury is no joke. So, I just kind of want to see how that one goes. G6, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Sit 1 PPR. Puka, Garrett Wilson, Kyron, or Achan. I will go ahead and sit. I'm personally going to go ahead and sit Puka. Yeah, I mean, Garrett Wilson playing the Patriots, definitely in good position this week for Breece Hall particularly, but Garrett Wilson, I think, will have a fine game. It just, again, it goes back to what I was just saying, right? Like, the trust isn't there for me with Puka tonight because we haven't seen him play since week 1, and he's been dealing with this injury since training camp. So I can't shake that and think that he's coming back 100% all of a sudden tonight. So that's kind of how I feel about Puka, is that I just want to see him, like, before I tell anybody or myself. Like, if I have him, I'm not playing him tonight personally in a lot of situations. Obviously, the wide receiver position is decimated with injuries. But when you've got these kind of options here, you got to be picky and you got to split hairs amongst great players, which is kind of what you're dealing with here. Puka is probably my sit of this group right here. Appreciate the super chat. And again, guys, that is the way to jump the line. If you want to get your question answered right away, super chat is the way to jump the line and get your question answered immediately. Until then, we'll go from top to bottom. Sydney Williams, what's going on? I'm going all in with Puka tonight, and I have Williams. Not sure what just happened. Whoops. I think my camera just died, guys. Give me a minute while we're in the darkness here. Just make sure that y'all can still hear me. As long as y'all can still hear me, we should be okay. Yeah, y'all can still hear me, right? If y'all can hear me, we're good for a little bit because my camera will come back on. It just died on me. So Sidney Williams, I'm going all in with Puka tonight, and I have Williams, so I'm pumped, especially with losing Godwin. Yeah, I mean, listen, I don't blame anybody for wanting to play Puka because Puka definitely does have upside. Like, obviously, Puka can easily be a top 10 wide receiver this week. There's no question about that to me. My ultimate fear is that, like I said, just what I've read with the potential of re-injury, it just is. It's scary. It's scary to understand that there's a potential for re-injury here, and I think that with Kyron, like obviously you've got tons of upside with Kyron Williams, but Puka, I'm not gonna in a lot of situations tell people to play him, but I mean, you're definitely right to have optimism with Puka. I mean, Puka, like I said, I go live after every Thursday night game anyway, so there's a good chance I come on here after the game and I'm like, yeah, well, I was wrong about that. I mean, I was wrong about Javonte Williams last week, so that's what I have a whole segment for. What I got right, what I got wrong. That's why I've got a whole entire segment for it. So we'll see how it goes. Jordan Stenmark, what's going on? Thoughts on this trade? 12-man full PPR. I traded J-Mo for Dobbs. J-Mo for Dobbs. So obviously J-Mo's dealing with the 2-game suspension. If you guys haven't heard, he is officially suspended for 2 days. Or 2 days. 2 games is what he's suspended for PEDs. And Dobbs is on a little bit of a heater himself. I mean, realistically, like Romeo Dobbs, let's look at his game log because he's been very involved in this offense the past several weeks. Romeo Dobbs, 2 weeks since he was suspended and he came back from the suspension. Here's what Romeo Dobbs has done. Romeo Dobbs, 18.4 fantasy points and 13.4 fantasy points, and that's in a half PPR format. So 10 targets last week and then 4 the week prior. So here's the thing, is that Romeo Dobbs, if you actually look at like the number of routes run by all those Green Bay wide receivers, Romeo Dobbs is really high up there on the list. Like he has been really providing a significant impact as far as like running routes for them. It's him and Jaden Reed. Those are the top 2 route runners on the team. So I think that he will continue to be really good in fantasy. The one thing I think with J-Mo is that he clearly has become less important. Not less important, but he's obviously been less involved in the offense over the past, I would say month or so. Let's go find Jameson Williams. Jameson Williams, yeah, like the last month, 3 targets, 2 targets, 4 targets, 1 target. Like that's just not like it's a far cry from his first 2 games when he was averaging 20 or 10 targets per game versus the first 2 weeks, right? Now, obviously, you have the potential for big plays. 15 points week 4, 16 points in week 6, because he hits on those big plays on minimum volume. For Romeo Dobbs, I probably would have done the same thing. I'm okay with doing that for Romeo Dobbs. It makes sense to me. But, it definitely is a little bit of a bummer to give up Jameson. Honestly, it's not even just the trade. It's a bummer that like Jameson is just in this position once again where he's like doing harm to his own career. It's like you're finally starting to catch some freaking steam, dude, and then you go and get in trouble doing PEDs. It's like, listen, I'm not trying to dog on him for doing PEDs or anything like that, but it just stinks. It's like this is now the second year in a row where he's shot himself in the foot with, his own personal issues. So it's a bummer. It's just a bummer is what it comes down to for me. Next question was Andy Gilliland. What's going on? What quarterback would you start this week? Darnold, Caleb, Purdy, Kirk, or Tua? Okay, so Tua coming back this week is definitely exciting. I don't know if I am totally... I don't know if I'm totally on board with starting him right away. Like, I guess I just can't really get what I saw from... I can't really get what I saw from this whole offense out of my head. Because it's been atrocious without him, right? And, like, obviously he's going to come in and look like the savior. It just makes me a little bit nervous. And with the other options, like, that you have, I think that you don't have to do that. You know, with Kirk this week, obviously I really like the potential of this one. Because he already crushed the Tampa Bay Buccaneers earlier this year. You know, Caleb against Washington is really intriguing. And then Brock is also intriguing as well. I think, personally, I would probably go ahead and play Caleb. I think Caleb makes the most sense out of these options right here, to be honest with you. I think that Caleb is in a situation this week where he plays Washington, and they may very well be without Jaden Daniels, and they're coming off a bye. So I think Chicago actually comes in pretty sharp in this game. So I've actually got a pretty good amount of confidence with Caleb this week. I'll go with Caleb. All right, give me 1 second, guys. I'm hooking up my camera again, so we should be able to see me here in a minute. KV. All right, I think we're good to go. We're back in commission. Back in it. We're back in it. Okay, so going back to the top. Joel, start Vikings defense or pick up Lions defense? I definitely want to play the Lions defense instead of the Vikings defense, especially now that the Vikings are going up against Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. Ultimately, the one thing that I would say, I don't think it's worth dropping the Vikings defense. They've been so dominant in fantasy football that I'm fine with starting them every week. It's just like when I go through my rankings, there's obviously weeks where I prefer other defenses based on matchup than I do with, playing the Vikings defense, who is going up against a tougher offense this week. I mean, the Puka and Cooper being back is definitely not a great matchup here. So I think if you can get away with like stashing the Vikings defense this week and just picking up the Lions defense, that's the move that I would personally make. I would personally make the Lions defense a move. Steve 512, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Javonte, McLaurin, Waddle, Bucky, Hopkins, flex PPR. Okay. Am I picking one? How many am I picking? I'll tell you what, I'll just rank them in order from favorite to least favorite. Okay, so McLaurin without Jaden is not fun, especially against the Bears defense. The Bears defense is not a good matchup for Terry McLaurin. It's not. Especially if he has Jaden. So he's probably towards the bottom. Bucky is not expected to play. That was news that dropped earlier as well. Bucky Irving not expected to play. I read that on Sleeper, I think. I can't find it on Google, but I'm pretty certain that I read that Bucky Irving is not expected to play. He hasn't practiced yet this week, and it's not looking good for Bucky Irving. So Javonte, Waddle, and Hopkins, I would personally go with... I'm fine with going with Hopkins over Waddle. And I've said it early, throughout the week. There's been a lot of situations that I've encountered with people obviously asking about DeAndre Hopkins since he got traded to the Kansas City Chiefs. And I find most of the time, I am leaning towards sitting him. I'm leaning towards sitting DeAndre Hopkins, but Jalen Waddle, like I need to see it first. I really do. I need to see it with this Miami Dolphins team with Tua back. Like I just need to see it first before I can commit to him because he's already just a low target guy. So I would go Hopkins over Waddle, and then I would probably go with Javonte over Hopkins this week. I think Javonte is my number one. Then it goes D-Hop. Then it goes with then it goes with Waddle. Mostly because of the fact that, listen, like, Javonte, this matchup is fantastic. Against the Carolina Panthers defense, they should run all over them too because the Panthers have to play Bryce Young, right? So this matchup all of a sudden becomes even better because the Panthers won't be able to score points. At least with Andy Dalton, they could score points in some weeks, right? So I don't think that this is going to be a situation where Denver's going to need to throw the ball a ton. I think this is going to be a run-heavy game script. And that's what happened last week for Denver and Javonte, and he ended up doing really well. So I've got Javonte as my favorite. And then my next two are Hopkins and then Jalen Waddle. Appreciate the super chat. Kevin, the credit guy, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. In Dynasty 12-team PPR Superflex, you're my Dynasty guy, Kevin. I just traded late 25 first and late 27 first for Puka. Good or bad? I'm first place right now. Well, I don't want to dive too deep into the logistics of this. The only thing I would say about this is whose first rounder did you trade in the league? Was it your own or was it somebody else's? And what's the projection of that first rounder going to be? Because if that's like got potential to be the 101, that makes me not like this as much. But if it has the potential to be like the 108, the 110, the 107, that doesn't matter for me. And 2027, like my way of thinking about doing trading future capital, like years down the road for an asset in fantasy that helps you now, I'm totally fine with doing it. Like, for example, I traded in my Dynasty League this year, before the season started, I traded a second rounder in 2027 for Chuba Hubbard and a third rounder in 2027. And at the time, like my league mates know I do this. Like my league mates know I'm a fantasy analyst on YouTube. So they were like, dude, you're like, how do people listen to you? This is so stupid. And it turns out I'm really right on this one because he's actually helping me win. And I'm in third place in that league. So it's worked out so far. So like, I'm fine with trading those future ones. The only way I look at this one is to say, if you traded away what looks like could be a top 3 pick this year, I don't love that personally. But if it's like a bottom 3 pick in the first round, then yes, I'm totally on board with this. Because Puka realistically is going to be good. Like long term, I have a lot of trust in him. I just don't. Honestly, the only thing that scares me with Puka and the reason I want to know what that capital was like is because you said it was projected 10 to 12, which is good. The reason I have issues with Puka in Dynasty is mostly because of the Rams. Like, the Rams are really close to blowing this whole thing up. Like, did anyone hear? Like, obviously, Cooper Kupp, his name was in the headlines. Well, Matt Stafford's name was being thrown out there, too, as a trade candidate. So, like, they're this close to blowing it up all over in Los Angeles. They're going to blow up that team and start over. So, who knows what the quarterback situation looks like 1 year from now, 2 years from now. That scares me with a guy like Puka. Appreciate the super chat. Kid with Steez. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Question in the chat. All right, let's go look. Kids with Steez. I gotta tell you, some of y'all's names crack me up. I feel like, anybody ever played that game Mad Gab, where you have to like string together a bunch of like gibberish to find what the phrases you say? That's what I feel sometimes saying these names. Trade Wilson and McLaurin for Hill and Keenan Allen. My other wide receivers are Mike Evans, Brian Thomas Jr., Addison, and Dobbs. Okay, so you're going to trade away Garrett Wilson and Terry for Tyreek and Keenan Allen. Yeah, that's a no-brainer to me. I mean, literally a no-brainer. Tyreek Hill and Devon Achane are the ones that I have the most confidence with Tua coming back. Like, I don't have as much confidence with Mostert or Jalen Waddle. Like, I know they have upside, but I want to see it first. I know Tyreek's going to go off, and I know Achane's going to have a great game soon, too. Oh, man, my camera is dying. Camera died again, guys. So just make sure you can hear me, okay? If you can hear me, we'll just roll like that until I can get this camera situation figured out. So, yeah, for me personally, you know, I think that it's a no-brainer because I view Garrett Wilson, again, as an option that doesn't have long-term upside on his side. I've outlined it for several videos over the past 2 weeks now. With Garrett Wilson, I ultimately just don't have tons of confidence that he maintains that wide receiver 1 role in New York. So I don't really view it that way. And with Terry, I actually kind of like him better at this point in fantasy than I do with Garrett Wilson personally. Terry is a very solid, steady asset to me because Terry, it's so clear that he's the wide receiver 1 in Washington. And ever since week 2, the dude's been on fire. I mean, he's been really good. And I just don't really see, I'm not saying that Garrett Wilson's going to stink all of a sudden, but I do have way more questions with him than I do with Tyreek at this point. Tyreek at this point, if you can make that deal happen, I'm definitely 100% doing that. And the other part of it is you're getting Keenan Allen, who definitely will have flex upside in some weeks. I was actually, I'll tell you the truth, guys, I was very, very tempted to make Keenan Allen a must start in my must start videos this week. The players that are going to unleash this week, he was very, very close. I'm curious to see what the target share will be like between both him and Rome Odunze this week, but they have a great matchup. I mean, there's no question. The Washington Commanders can be thrown all over. So I was very tempted, and yes, I like the trade for sure. Appreciate the super chat. Tyler Sperry, question in the chat. Also, Ferguson or Otten, Love or Jalen? First of all, Love over Jalen this week. Literally, I can't Love over everybody for me. Josh Allen's the only one I struggle with because he's taking on Tennessee, but I would still play him over Josh Allen because I think that Josh Allen, this game's going to get out of hand for Buffalo. So Josh Allen won't have much need to throw the ball at a certain point. So I do think that with Love, Love, the good thing about Love's situation this week is he's playing the worst defense in the league. They're a disgrace. And the other good part of it is that Jordan Love, I don't think that this will be some blowout. I do think that the Jags can put up points, and they will to a certain extent. It's a high over-under. I mean, it's a pretty high over-under. So I do really like Jordan Love this week. I can't envision benching him ever. Honestly, Jalen's got a good matchup too. I'm not benching Jordan Love. I'm going Jordan Love. I truly mean it when I say he's must start. I would play him over every single quarterback in fantasy this week. Ferguson or Otten? I would go with Cade Otten personally. Listen, the thing about Ferguson is that Ferguson's reliant on a broken quarterback right now. And I'll be honest, I don't have a ton of faith that this team rebounds. I really personally don't. You know, Jake Ferguson, week 6, 2.6 fantasy points, and obviously they got hammered in that game. I don't put it past them that they get to get hammered again by San Fran. I really don't think the Cowboys are in good shape. I think this Jerry Jones, I don't know if y'all have followed any of this Jerry Jones drama. I mean, he's a disaster. I mean, he really, really is starting to look like just a lunatic. And it's so bad for their team. It's so toxic for their team. And this is exactly the reason why I say I don't believe that every fantasy YouTuber follows football. I don't think all of them watch football. because this stuff is important and people don't talk about it. I mean, the team morale of this team is going downhill fast, and I think that affects everybody. Cade Otton isn't just as opportunistic a situation as Jake Ferguson, except Cade Otton isn't dealing with an idiot owner who's intervening in everything and making the team culture look atrocious. So, yeah, I would go with Otton over Ferguson. Let me see if I can find your question in the chat really quick. Would you bench Commanders kicker for Vikings kicker? Yes, I would. Yes, I would. Let me expand on that really quick, too. Because I got a ton of, dude, I got a ton of flack on my kicker rankings video today when I left Austin Seibert out. Listen, if you've watched that kickers ranking video that I've done, I do kicker rankings video every year, every week. So I know the fantasy kicker position better than every other fantasy creator on YouTube. So I've been big on Austin Seibert for a long time now. The reality is this matchup, like, just look at what he did last week, right? Like, Austin Seibert was excellent last week. But you know who they played? They played the Carolina freaking Panthers. And they hammered them because Carolina sucks. They're playing the Bears this week. Off a bye. Without Jaden Daniels. They're not going to be the same. They will not move the ball the same level. And I'm not saying that you're saying that, Tyler Sperry. I'm addressing the broader question that people had, and it was just funny to me. I'm okay with picking fights on this Austin Seibert thing because I'm pretty sure it's going to be right. I would definitely go with Will Reichard tonight, personally. He's done really well. I mean, this offense has been a little less efficient over the past 2 games. Since they played New York, Will Reichard, 16, 15 fantasy points. That's because this offense is good enough to get them down there, but not always good enough to capitalize. So, yeah, I would personally go ahead and play Will Reichard. Appreciate the super chat, Tyler. G. Medina, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Drop Bateman for McMillan and gamble on his upside. Ooh, man. Well, I'll tell you this. Here's the reason I'm not going to do it this week. Because Zay Flowers has missed 2 straight practices. So Zay Flowers, his likelihood of playing is going down quick. And that's a huge opportunity for Rashad Bateman, who he had a good game. Obviously, he hit on a big play, which kind of changed the trajectory. I don't think people realize this. Rashad Bateman's the wide receiver 22 this year. It's been really good. And it's been very consistent. And the big play upside has been pretty consistent with Rashad Bateman. Look at his freaking yards per reception, guys. 1 game, he has averaged less than 13 yards per reception. 1 game. That's unheard of. And I think it's very sustainable in his role. Now, again, with Zay being out this week potentially, it totally increases his upside. So Rashad Bateman to me he's definitely a must-keep player right now as far as I'm concerned. I get it, McMillan. I was actually big on the guy before the start of the season, but Bateman is actually doing it. So I got to stick with Bateman. Appreciate the super chat. Steve 512, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. CJ or Tua? My opponent has Tyreek and Achane. I'll be honest with you. I've seen some excitement about CJ having a bounce back week this week. Listen, I don't think that's like necessarily a bad thing to think. My thoughts on it though are that, listen, I think the Texans are going to crush the Colts this week, and I think the Texans defense does well, and I think that this is a Joe Mixon game. And I think that, listen, what we've seen from CJ Stroud, 2 games without Nico Collins, been pretty mid. 19.4 fantasy points against New England, which was good, and then 5.3 last week. You know, it's in a game where he threw less than 100 yards. Like, that's not good. In Indy, I get it. The matchup's really good. It's a divisional game, and I think they're going to end up winning pretty easily. So I just don't have a ton of trust in CJ this week, to be honest with you. I would go with Tua here. I think I like Tua's upside better versus the Arizona Cardinals than I do with CJ this week. So I would go with Tua. Appreciate the super chat. King Autumn, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Puka or Bucky Irving? Again, Bucky Irving looks like he may not play. I don't know if people... I'm kind of doubting that I read that right now. I'm pretty sure I read that right, but I'm almost certain that I read that Bucky Irving does not look like he's trending towards playing this week. So I wouldn't risk it for sure. If we don't have official word, all we have to go off of is that he's missed 2 practices this week. I'm going to play Puka tonight over Bucky Irving for sure. Appreciate the super chat. Malcolm King, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Sam Darnold or CJ Stroud this week. So that's a tester. That's a tester because I think Stroud does have certain upside to a point. But again, I don't believe that this game script is going to be the right one to play CJ Stroud. I think that the Texans will end up beating the Colts pretty decisively. So I am going to go with Sam Darnold this week because I think that, honestly, guys, I think this could be a really entertaining Thursday night football game. I think it could be the best one since Atlanta and Tampa. I think this one has a lot of good stuff in store for us. I'm excited for this matchup tonight, to be honest with you. So I'm gonna go with Sam Darnold over CJ Stroud this week. Appreciate the super chat. The Argonite 1234. What's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Opinion on Komet and Henry. Thanks. So I've got opinions on everybody. That's the good news, is that I don't hold bar either. My opinion on Komet, it's very, very uncomfortable. The idea of playing Cole Komet is very uncomfortable to me week to week. Because I don't realistically see how his target share can find any kind of consistent balance that we can rely on as fantasy managers to make that consistent decision to play him. Like, Cole Komet, just think about the receivers he has there. He's got DJ Moore, clear-cut number 1. Hasn't been for them necessarily, but he's a number 1 wideout. You don't ignore him. Keenan Allen's all of a sudden becoming Keenan Allen again. And Rome Odunze is getting better by the day. Cole Komet, his target share has been largely fluctuative. Like, it's been fluctuating quite a bit. And, outside of that 11 target game he had against Indy, it's been not, 5 targets a game, 4 targets a game, 3 targets a game. That's what we've been getting. So to me, Cole Komet is clearly a boomer bust guy. Clearly a boomer bust guy. Hunter Henry, on the other hand, I think it's actually a lot more sustainable. 2 games now with Drake May. 5 targets, 9 targets. 11.6 fantasy points, 13.2. And last week he had 13.2 without a touchdown. He had 13.2 fantasy points without a touchdown. So I think it's a lot more sustainable for Hunter Henry to keep up with this production, because Hunter Henry has clearly kind of established himself as a guy that Drake May wants to throw to and trust. And they have minimal options. So this week I would play Henry. And for future, I probably prefer Henry over Komet. That's my thoughts on both of them. Appreciate the super chat. Steve, what's going on? You rock, Ryan. Thanks. I appreciate you. Appreciate the super chat. I appreciate the support. Super chats definitely are very supportive, guys. And also, they jump you to the front of the line to get your question answered. So if you do want your question answered right away, just put it in a super chat. Appreciate you, man. Good to see you in here, Steve. Riley Penny, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Darnold or Kyler? PPR start 2. Achane, Jaden Reed, James Conner. Yeah, Kyler, honestly, Kyler is such a wild card that it's so hard, given what his rushing upside is, it's so hard to bench this guy. Because, just look at his freaking game log on the ground. It's outrageous. 57 yards, 59 yards, 45, 3, 83, 14, 64. This dude can break off a 50 to 60 yard run any freaking week. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, I just think that, with his situation, I find it so hard to bench Kyler. I really do. Kyler's upside is 28 to 30 points. He can get you that kind of week he got against the Rams. The 49ers, he had a great game. Last week against the Chargers, he had a really good game. With Darnold, first of all, you have to bake in an interception per game, basically. There's only been one game he hasn't thrown a pick. But Darnold's upside is kind of 23, 25 fantasy points, which is still good, but Kyler against Miami, I actually like the matchup. And with that rushing upside, it's just so hard to bench a guy like that. I'd go with Kyler Murray personally. And then with your start 2, Jaden's definitely going my lineup. I love Jaden Reed this week. Jaden's a never bench for me, though, personally, for better or worse. That's Deebo Samuel Jr. Jaden Reed. Oh, you mean Deebo Samuel Jr.? And then Achane or Connor. They're really close. They're really, really close. In your situation, I think I'd rather hedge myself against potentially 2 Cardinals busts by going with Devon Achane. That's what I think I'm going to do here to hedge, to kind of create a safety blanket for myself or for you and go with Kyler at quarterback, Achane, and Jaden Reed. Because with Connor and Devon Achane this week, they were back-to-back in my rankings. I had Connor one spot over him. So I don't really view them too much differently this week. Achane obviously has the higher ceiling. So I'll go with the higher ceiling play here with Achane and Jaden Reed. Appreciate the super chat, Riley. Chitty, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Puka or Keenan Allen? I'd go Puka. Yeah, I would go Puka. I did say earlier, if you were with me in the stream earlier, I did say that I definitely have I had a really close moment with myself where I almost went with Keenan Allen as a must-start guy this week. I couldn't pull the trigger on it because I don't Keenan Allen's target share since he came back has basically mirrored Rome Odunze's. Keenan Allen has not been much more involved than Rome. They've actually pretty much done the same exact thing. Keenan Allen, since he came back, 3 targets, 6 targets, 5 targets. Right? It's not like he's getting 11 targets like he did in week 1. So I would go with Puka here because I do think, again, I think this one could easily become a shootout tonight. And I want options in it. And this is a matchup I feel more comfortable playing someone like a Puka Nacua in. So I'll go with Puka. Appreciate the super chat. Crimson Drift, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Should I play Puka or DJ Moore? Ooh, man, that's actually a really tough one. Because I really do like DJ Moore's potential this week. It's so tough, man. It really is. Because it's these Chicago wide receivers, I want to play one of them. I just don't know how to feel. To be honest with you, this is one I would go DJ Moore here because I have the same concerns basically with Puka, except with DJ Moore, I'm getting a guy who's actually fully healthy and has a better matchup. So it makes more sense to me to go with a guy like Puka, or to go with a guy like DJ Moore than it does to go with a guy like Puka, who is, again, coming off an injury that I don't have a lot of trust in that he doesn't get re-injured. So I'll go with DJ Moore here. Appreciate the super chat. I'm going to try one more time to get this camera hooked up, guys. So bear with me. All right, here we are. We're back. Do not die on me again, camera. Riley Penny, what's going on? Kraft or Hunter Henry full PPR? I would go with... That's tough. Tucker Kraft is such a boomer bust player, though. Tucker Kraft, realistically, tight end 3 right now in fantasy. Would you believe it? I would, because he's had some big games. But realistically, like, 9 and 5 targets that he got in weeks 4 and 5, very hard to sustain that unless it's like a big shootout. Like, Houston last week ended up not being as big of a shootout as I thought it could be. With the Los Angeles Rams, that one wasn't a huge shootout, but he did get in the end zone twice. Minnesota was a pretty big shootout. Hunter Henry versus the Jets, I kind of really low-key like this matchup. Hunter Henry has been, like I just said, Hunter Henry has been so much more consistent than, you know, these like high upside, like boomer bust guys like Tucker Kraft. But obviously the upside is better. I'm going to go with Hunter Henry, though. I'm going to trust my gut on this one because my gut is telling me that Henry is going to be a really, like, for example, David Njoku now is pretty much viewed as like a top 5 tight end in fantasy because they not only traded away Amari Cooper, the main competition for targets, they also upgraded a quarterback by injury to Deshaun Watson, right? So, like, his upside is now viewed as if he's a top 5 guy rest of season, and I agree with that. I think Hunter Henry is being slept on. This offense doesn't have playmakers either, and May is functional. May has actually done okay. All things considered in New England, I think he's done fine. So I would go with Hunter Henry in this game. I think Hunter Henry very quickly, potentially after this week, if he has a good game, could become a guy that everybody acknowledges, yeah, this is a guy that does not go on my bench anymore. So I would personally go with Hunter Henry. Appreciate the super chat. MC, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Yo, Ryan, pick one D-Hop, Puka, McMillan at flex, full PPR. D-Hop or Puka? Ooh. That's a good one. D-Hop or Puka is interesting because they both are coming into, I mean, obviously it's the same situation for Puka, but he's coming in for the first time since week 1. So we don't know how he's going to look exactly. With D-Hop, it's a totally new situation that could go either really good or really bad. Oh, that's tough, man. Honestly, that's a tough one. D-Hop's matchup versus the Raiders, I'm probably going to go with Puka because, again, I think the potential for a shootout in that game for the Raiders and Chiefs is almost non-existent. Like, I don't think there's any chance that game becomes a shootout. Whereas with this game tonight, I do think this could become a shootout. And I want more options in a shootout than I do with a lower scoring matchup. I think the Chiefs and the Raiders will keep a low scoring. And I would just rather take the shot on D-Hop in future weeks whenever he has another week with the offense. I'll go with Puka. Appreciate the super chat. Dylan Dodge, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Cooper Kupp or Jordan Mason for flex? I think I got to go with Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason makes a lot of sense. Like, the matchup versus Dallas is really good, first of all. Second of all, Cooper Kupp, again, he's coming back for the first time tonight. And again, I think that his upside is pretty ridiculous. But the way I look at Jordan Mason, man, is like, I think that people are starting to get a little nervous because of the injury. And the last several games, like, haven't been Jordan Mason's best. Where's Jordan Mason? Jordan Mason, the last 3 games have been under 10 fantasy points. So obviously disappointing. The game versus Arizona, really good on the ground, just didn't get in the end zone. Seahawks, really good on the ground, cut short. And last week, pretty good on the ground considering that he was playing the Kansas City Chiefs. He's playing Dallas this week. And they've got nobody. I mean, I made the kicker ranking video today, and I lost my composure because I was laughing my head off just like reading through all the injuries that the 49ers are dealing with. It's not that it's funny that all those players are hurt. The funny part to me is that, like, they're so injured, from Debo to Kittle to Juwan Jennings to Ayuk to McCaffrey to their defense. It's down to their freaking kicker position. 2 kickers that play for the 49ers are out with injury. I mean, it's like, it's unbelievable what the 49ers are dealing with right now. So, like, Jordan Mason, if he's breathing, like, they're going to put him in there. And I just have to go with him in this great of a matchup here. I like Cooper Kupp in a lot of situations, but not over Jordan Mason. I'm cracking myself up again because it's crazy. I mean, it's crazy what's happening to them. Appreciate the super chat, Dylan Dodge. We'll go back up to the top, answer some questions. We'll go top to bottom until we get a super chat. Super chats are the way to get your questions answered immediately. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Show your support. Okay, back up at the top here. Puka or Lad? I'd go with Puka. Yeah, Puka I think is a better play this week than Lad. Lad, first of all, he's still dealing with an injury. And I think that this is a game where, I think this is a J.K. Dobbins game. And realistically, like, the Chargers don't throw the ball enough to really, like, give Lad tons of upside. Lad has a pretty decent, he's starting to kind of develop a pretty decent floor. Like, that's what we're noticing, especially in a full PPR league. But Lad McConkey just doesn't have tons of upside. Lad, the past 3 weeks, 15.2, 6.3, 7.1. We're getting closer to, like, really solid floor level for Lad McConkey. So I do think that his target share is obviously very consistent. Puka just provides more upside. I mean, that's just the only reason that I'm going to go with Puka over Lad this week. There's no other deeper analysis other than the fact that Puka just is a higher upside player. Jordan Addison or Najee Harris, PPR. Dahir Ahmed asks, Addison or Najee, man? Ugh. Najee, I got flack for it too yesterday when I did not rank Najee inside of my top 30 running backs. I got flack for it. Listen, Najee is not like a revelation. This offense, I'm telling you guys right now, like, I admitted I was wrong about Russ's first start, obviously. The Giants' defense is better than the Jets. I said this whenever they got rid of Robert Saleh, the head coach. This defense was actually the best part of this team. And who was running the defense? Well, it was Robert freaking Saleh. So the moment that they get rid of him, their defensive coordinator becomes the head coach. All of a sudden, he has to take on responsibilities he's never taken on before. And their defense has been horrible ever since then. So I just realistically can't put tons of confidence in Najee because this Giants matchup, it's so low bar. Like, it's the lowest over-under of the week. Jordan Addison tonight in a high-scoring potential matchup versus a beatable defense. I've got to go with Jordan Addison here. Dylan Dodge, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Sorry, one no more. Don't apologize, man. Good to talk to you. Cooper Kupp or Stephon Diggs? Ooh, I would go with Kupp here. Yeah, Kupp makes a lot of sense to me here. Listen, the problem with Diggs is that Diggs is a target guy, similar to Cooper Kupp, but there's a reality here with Stephon Diggs. Without Nico, 16 fantasy points and 4. Like, this is starting to look a little similar to what happened last year. Stephon Diggs started out last year really, really hot, and then kind of just like fell off. Like, he fell off the map totally. So it just doesn't it just doesn't vibe well with me. Whereas with Cooper Kupp, I mean, the potential that he gets 15 targets tonight, definitely possible. It's definitely possible. I think he absolutely could get 15 targets tonight. Not going to say he's going to get 20 like he did in week 1, but, definitely possible that he gets 15 to 10 targets tonight. Again, I think they're going to be in a pretty high scoring matchup. I'm really excited for this game. Honestly, guys, I'm super excited to watch this game. I'll go with Cooper Kupp. I think the upside's on his side. Appreciate the super chat, Dylan. Terrence Holmes, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Should I start Rashad Bateman and Rico Dowdle or Ray Davis? It depends on what your question is as far as, like, who are your other options besides Rashad Bateman, right? Rashad Bateman, again, we just went over it earlier in the live stream. He's the wide receiver 22 in half PPR. Like, this guy has actually been low-key really good. And again, there's a lot of factors to this. Obviously, because like the wide receiver position has been totally banged up this year. It's been crazy. I just kind of struggle to like outright say that he's like a must-start guy. I don't view him as a must-start guy. But yeah, I mean, I think there are a lot of situations, especially if Zay Flowers does not play in this game, he will be in my lineup. Like, I have Rashad Bateman in a couple different leagues, and I will be putting him in my lineup for sure. So it just depends. It depends on who your other options are. Rico or Ray Davis, got to go with Rico for sure. Ray Davis with James Cook, the upside just isn't really there. With Rico, at the very least, like, the 49ers have been a little bit susceptible on the ground. Like, that's kind of been the weakness lately. And again, it's hard to tell if it's really a team weakness or it's because their team has been ravaged. I mean, it's crazy what they're dealing with injuries. It's absolutely insanity. So it's hard to tell if it's a true weakness or if it is a situational weakness because of injuries. But I would personally play Rico Dowdle for sure. He's at least got the starter role. Appreciate the super chat, Terrence. We'll answer a couple more questions, then we're going to get out of here and watch this Thursday night game that I'm really excited to watch. Back up to the top. Should I trade Jameson Williams for Rico Dowdle? Eduardo Andre Linares asks. Jameson for Rico. I would not do this personally. And I'll tell you why. If I want to trade a guy like Jameson, let's just assess who Jameson is as a fantasy player. Jameson Williams is a high upside, big boom hit type of player. Like, you take out week 1 where he had 9 targets. Week 2 was also 11 targets. Take out those first 2 weeks. Week 4, 15 fantasy points. How did he get them? 2 targets, 2 catches, 1 to the house. He had a house call that was like 50 yards. Okay, that explains that. Dallas, 16.2 fantasy points. How did he do that? 3 catches, 76 yards, 1 touchdown on 4 targets. His upside in fantasy is totally linked to big plays, which by nature makes him an unstable play, but at the same time, it also makes him a very exciting play when he hits because have the potential to be a massive reason why you want a week. Rico does none of the above. I mean, Rico, like, I get it. The 2 games before the Detroit Lions game, Rico Dowdle actually was pretty good. The bottom line is, I've said this quite a bit. Over the season, I've always said with Rico Dowdle, I think he has an expiration date as far as I'm concerned. Because I think that what we have to keep in mind is that this Dallas Cowboys team with Mike McCarthy, first of all, he's a dead man walking. He's not going to be their coach next year. Number 2 is that he doesn't like to run the ball much. There's a reason he let Tony Pollard go and they didn't pursue a running back. Because he doesn't really like to run the ball. Right? Like Pollard, his carries went down last year. So they just don't really like to run the ball that much. So unless Rico all of a sudden becomes some great receiving back, I think that Jameson's definitely got a beat on upside. So I'll stick with Jameson. Just got to ride out the 2-game suspension. Last question for the night. Michael Chang, what's going on? Appreciate the super chat. Trade Puka, Chubb, Mason for Bijan. Rest of team is Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Cook, Achane, Tracy Davis, St. Brown, Wilson, Reed, Brian Thomas Jr., and Pitts. Puka in my IR spot, need a roster spot. Okay, I see. Man, that's rich for Bijan, man. I don't know. I'm not exactly the most pro Bijan guy. It's not because I don't like Bijan. I just don't trust this workload to sustain itself. I really don't. That's too rich for me, man. Like, I get it. You're giving up a collection of guys who have big names and they've all been dealing with some sort of injury-related type of thing. Mason's got what many perceive to be an expiration date. I'm not certain about that, and I've been very clear about that over the weeks. I have no certainty that Mason doesn't remain the starter the entire year. Chubb, I think, gets better, especially with Jameis now at quarterback. I think that team's upside as a whole is better. And Puka is just not, like, to me, if you want to make this type of deal and you want to package these guys together, I'm looking for a guy like Brees. Like, Brees is right behind him at RB7. I think I would rather take that. I would rather take on Kenneth Walker than Bijan. I'd rather take on Jahmyr Gibbs, Kyron Williams. Those maybe, Kyron and Jahmyr Gibbs may be getting into the range where people wouldn't do that. But I think Brees is a legitimate guy to do that deal with, and I think Kenneth is too. So that for me is just too rich for Bijan. I just don't trust this workload. I just don't. So I would personally, if you want to do this type of package, I would do it and try to get a Brees, a Kenneth, a Gibbs, or a Kyron Williams. Again, appreciate the super chat, Michael. Well, let's get out of here tonight. Go enjoy the Thursday night game. I think this one's going to be really good. Like the video on the way out. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And I will see you guys after the Thursday night game tonight. Peace out, guys. Enjoy your Thursday night football matchup. Dylan Straub, I did see the super chat before I left. So if you have a question, I'll hang back for a couple minutes here. But this will be the last question that I do answer. Looking in the chat to see if I can see anything. Dylan Straub. The only thing I see from you is, okay, my question was Puka or Jalen McMillan. Gotcha. I'm going to go with Puka personally. Look, I think Jalen McMillan, I really liked him for the role that I thought he was going to have, right? Like, before the season started, I actually was big on Puka Nacua, or I'm sorry, big on Jalen McMillan because of the fact that Jalen McMillan was in a position where he was going to be the wide receiver 3 on a pass-heavy offense because they can't run the ball very well. And it was going to be in a good, it was in a good position to get tons of like big play threat. Because like I've watched this guy, Jalen McMillan, like in college, he was mostly a big play threat. And he just isn't like a refined receiver yet. Like that's not what his game is. So I think it's kind of like similar to what we've seen from Xavier Worthy over the past few weeks, which is that Xavier Worthy has kind of been thrust into a role that he's not comfortable in, and the team is probably not comfortable putting him in. I think McMillan is about to enter that. So Puka, we already know that he's a possession receiver who could get all this kind of stuff. I would personally go with Puka over Jalen McMillan this week. Appreciate the super chat. Sal Vetri, what's going on, man? Appreciate the super chat tonight. Always good. I appreciate your content, man. I think you do great work, Sal. Really appreciate the super chat. It was very generous of you. Other than that, I think we'll end off the night there. Everybody enjoy Thursday Night Football. Enjoy Thursday Night Football. I think this is going to be a really good one to watch. And appreciate all you guys being here. Make sure to like the video. Subscribe to the channel on your way out. And there is a good projection this week to take advantage of on Underdog if you would like to. Matt Stafford, 0.5 total yards. You hit the higher on that one, that's free money. So that one sells itself. There's a link to it in the description if you want to get it on your way out. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you after the game tonight. Enjoy the game.